Welcome, everyone, to Buddha's Center. I feel so grateful to be here tonight with you. We have this human basis of leisure where we're able to listen to these teachings and we're able to learn how to achieve exactly what we're always trying to get to and never seeming to achieve. So let's first begin by rejoicing in the fact that we have this human basis of leisure and we can engage in the pathways which will allow us to have the most reliability that one can ever have for others, have perfect love and compassion, perfect skillful means and power, perfect wisdom, this perfect loving and concern for others. We have the ability with this human basis that we have right now, and we have this life of leisure where we have the Dharma in our lives and we have the opportunity to study it. So please just rejoice. Exhale for a moment. We come in with so many worries and we have so many things going on that cause our mind to worry and that cause our mind to be so disturbed. But just take a moment to rejoice in the fact that we have these teachings in our lives and we can practice them. And then by practicing them, we can become the most reliable guides in the universe, just like Buddha Shakyamuni, because we have a mind just like Buddha Shakyamuni's mind was before Buddha Shakyamuni became enlightened, a mind in the nature of clear light that's unsullied, that has stains that are adventitious, that are not the nature of it. These stains can be removed. The adventitious defilements can be removed. These afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience can be removed. And rejoice in the fact that we have a method. We have teachers in our lives that can show us how to remove those things that keep us from experiencing what we want to experience. So now let's begin with setting the motivation, the highest motivation possible. In Arya Nagarjuna's commentary on the waking mind, he talks about it being the highest ideal of the Mahayana. In Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, it talks about the mind that aspires to enlightenment, Bodhicitta, the desire to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, being a gold-making elixir that transforms this ordinary, impure body, speech, and mind into the jewel of the pure body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, the pure jewel of the Buddha. So this bodhicitta is the only thing that allows us to enter into the vehicle which will get us to that state where we have perfect love, compassion, skillful means, power, perfect wisdom, this perfect concern for others. The mind that aspires to enlightenment is the only thing that allows us to start that process as bodhisattvas. So let's begin by setting our motivation that we're attending this teaching. We're attending this teaching on the stages of the path to enlightenment in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We know there's so many terrible things going on in the world right now. Tibet is suffering greatly with the earthquake that just took place. So many people passed away. So many animals died. So many people are in so many incredible states of fear. Think about the fires that are going on in California, the wars that are going on all over the world, all of the human beings that are experiencing intense amounts of suffering, all of the animals that are experiencing intense amounts of suffering. Think about the only way that we can truly help those beings is to figure out how to show them how to never have to experience those things which come through the force of a karma and afflictions driven by the subtle afflictions of the self-grasping ignorance, popping up what's called inappropriate attention that then gives rise to the afflictions and karma that make these experiences of suffering occur. The suffering of suffering, these gross sufferings that we're seeing going on all around the world are because of the fact that we are in cyclic existence. Cyclic existence is the place and the inhabitants, this place, this realm of the human realm that we're in, and we can see the animal realms. this realm of suffering where we're plagued with the various types of suffering. We have the 8 types of suffering, the 6 types of suffering, and the 3 types of suffering. And among the 3 types of suffering, we see the suffering of suffering, the suffering that we're experiencing when we have a headache, the suffering that all of those people are experiencing in the earthquake in Shigatse and in Tibet and then the fires, and all of these beings that are living in terror because of being under the force of karma and afflictions and not having freedom, and lack of freedom is misery. All of these impure states, all of these negative states of experiences are caused by one evil thing that's within our minds that luckily we can remove, and that's self-grasping ignorance. And the way that we can remove our lack of reliability is by removing not only the self-grasping ignorance, but its stains and the subtle self-cherishing attitude that comes along with those stains, that are those stains. And that subtle self-cherishing attitude and the stains of the self-grasping ignorance, once gotten rid of, allows that being to become the Buddha, who's the most reliable guide in the universe, that can show every single sentient being in the universe how to never have to experience the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death again, not ever have to experience the suffering of separating from the pleasant, meeting with the unpleasant, never have to experience the suffering again of not getting what you want, never have to experience the suffering again of being forced into the appropriated aggregates by our contaminated karmas and afflictions and their corresponding active seeds driven by self-grasping ignorance. Forced again and again and again into suffering states of body and mind, mental states of suffering, physical states of suffering, again and again. We didn't have a choice but to be forced into this, because we were forced into this by these karma afflictions driven by self-grasping ignorance that since beginningless time has affected us, this innate self-grasping ignorance that causes us to see things, causes all of our senses to have this appearance of inherent existence at all times, this innate self-grasping ignorance that is driving all of the problems, all of the sufferings, everything negative in the world, everything negative that we can ever experience, driving it. So let's set our motivation that let's transcend that state. Let's transcend the state of self-grasping ignorance. Let's transcend the state of the self-cherishing attitude, even at its most subtle level. And let's learn how to make the suffering of others our own suffering and not be satisfied until every single sentient being in the universe is free from suffering, and not be satisfied until every single sentient being in the universe has a complete perfected state of happiness. And when we start to engage in these practices of generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment, we see how that kind of attitude is possible. We see how reasoning leads our mind to knowing that these things make more sense than the other ways that we were acting and behaving. We allow our minds to begin to see that connecting with other beings and putting their needs before our own needs is the way that we can fulfill both of our needs. We're so fortunate to have these teachings, to know that we can set this motivation of the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And we can even do it in a contrived way, a facsimile of the actual mind that aspires to enlightenment. And by doing this over and over and over again, we set up a mental basis that shows our mind that we should have an affinity for such a state of mind, such a loving state of mind, such a compassionate state of mind, a mind that only day and night wishes to move from help to help to help to help, from wanting a being to have happiness and trying to figure out a way how to teach that being the truth of suchness, how to teach that being the truth of cherishing others is more important than cherishing yourself. Because that's the only way that beings can experience the most amount of happiness. So let's set our motivation that we're attending this teaching in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, in order to achieve that state where we can show beings how to get rid of those things which are causing them to have suffering over and over again, and have done so since beginningless time. Let's imagine that all of the holy enlightened beings are filling the space in front of us and giving us courage, giving us the strength, blessing our minds. We're connecting with these beings that will give us the roadmap to show us exactly how to get to enlightenment. And by remembering these beings in the merit field, and by setting in our minds, firmly placing in our minds that the source of all of our good is our teacher. And we want to have a good teacher, a teacher who understands everything that we need to understand. And we know that those holy beings in the enlightened merit field know exactly what we need to know, because they've done what we need to do in order to achieve the states that they've achieved. So we try to connect our minds in all lives with these beings of such as Shakyamuni Buddha, and the beings of the Nalanda tradition, and the beings of the Tibetan tradition, so that we can then, in all of our lives, if in this life, with this human basis of leisure, we don't become enlightened, we will in our next life very quickly be able to connect with those things, which will allow us to continue on our journey to the removal of the afflictive obstruction, our journey which removes the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, and allows us to achieve the state of no more learning, the state of complete Buddhahood. So we're looking in the space in front of us, seeing Buddha Shakyamuni, seeing Lord Chenrezig, who's embodied by, is in our world right now, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, imagining His Holiness in the space in front of us, the wish-fulfilling jewel in our world, imagining our root lamas, imagining Namgyo Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, imagining Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche, Dema Losha Rinpoche, Khyentse Lobsang Gyatso Rinpoche, imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu Rinpoche, Umzala Geshe Aga Rinpoche, any being that you consider enlightened, any being that you've connected with in your lifetime that you know has that nectar of reality to give to you, that if you take the medicine that they have, you can achieve those results that they've clearly achieved if you've spent time with these kinds of holy enlightened beings. Beings like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Jeffrey Hopkins Rinpoche, all of these holy enlightened beings, anyone you consider. Imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and Master Asanga. We've been talking about the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. That precious teaching is passed down through this lineage. So imagine in this lineage those holy beings like Master Asanga and Master Basu Bandhu and Master Dharmakirti and Master Dignaga and Arya Vimuktasena and Master Haribhadra and Master Shakyarprabha and Master Gunaprabha, Lama Salimpa, Lord Atisha, Master Drone Tompa. All of these beings are our spiritual relatives. We are so connected to them. We're hearing a teaching tonight that was passed down through this lineage from Buddha Shakyamuni to us. Imagining the lay Master Drone Tompa, who the entire Lamrim lineage goes through. And this lineage of the 7-point cause and effect and this side of the extensive deeds lineage goes through. We see that Lord Atisha, Lama Salimpa and Lord Atisha and Master Drone Tompa are on both sides of this, because the Bodhicitta lineage of the 7-point cause and effect and equalizing and exchanging self with others is actually held, both of those lineages held by them. And this is why we see them on both sides of this kind of lineage field. Now imagine the holy beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna, and Master Buddha Palita, and Master Arya Deva, and Master Chandrakirti, and Bodhisattva Shantideva, and Master Baba Vega, and the great abbot Chandrashita, and Master Yanagarbha, and Master Kamalashila, Lama Salimpa, Lord Atisha, Master Drone Tompa. All of these holy beings in the space in front of you, the beings of the lineage of blessing passed down from Lord Vajradhara to masters like Saraha, Master Matripa, Master Tilopa, Master Naropa, Lotsawa Marpa, Jetsun Milarepa, Jagam Popa. All of these holy beings, it's so important that we connect our minds to these beings. It's just so important. And if we're reading the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa, we know that we're being blessed by all of these masters that I'm mentioning right now. We don't even necessarily know it, but the words, the nectar-like words that Lama Tsongkhapa is writing is all flowing from the meanings and the points that have been made, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni through this incredible Nalanda tradition, the incredible Sanskrit tradition. Imagining the holy beings of the three old Kadampa lineages. Imagine Master Drontompa passing down those incredible teachings of the Lam Rim that were looked at in various different ways, from extensive, vast ways in relationships to them to more abbreviated ways and oral instructive ways. Those three old Kadampa lineages, imagining all of the masters of the Nyingma like Padmasambhava and Longchenpa and Je Mipam, Master Longchenpa and Je Mipam, all of the masters of the Sakya tradition, like Sakya Randawa, Master Sakya Randawa, Master Sakya Pandita, Master Sakya Kungan all these holy beings of the Kaju tradition, like Je Gampopa, Lord Milarepa, all of the masters, the Karmapas, and so forth, imagining the holy beings of the Galupa lineage, Lama Tsongkhapa, Master Kirtupje, Master Jesupje, Master Basachuji Jetson, Master Pachin Sonandrapa, Master Jayan Cheba, Master Gonja Jimmy Wampo, Master Janjarupi Dorje, the masters like the first and second Panchen Lama, the masters like all of the Dalai Lamas, the first, third, fifth, seventh, 14th, all of these texts that we read during these classes. Imagine that these beings are right there in the space in front of you and blessing you to be able to concretize your understanding, to be able to always connect with these beings and have them be able to skillfully show you exactly how to understand what's in their incredible treatises. We're so fortunate to have these beings in our world. Imagine the highest Yoga Tantra deities, performance Tantra deities, and action Tantra deities, all the 35 Buddhists, all the protector deities. Imagine them all in the space in front of you. Again, we're taking the time to do this, to have inspiration, to see beings who have come before us who are just like us. We know that in Master Dignaga's Pramana Samuchaya, the quote that says, the homage verse, it says, the one who transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, protector, to you I make prostrations. And we see the one who transformed into a reliable guide. The Buddha had to transform, just like we have to transform. The entire merit field in the space in front of us had to transform, just like we have to transform. They serve as our role models, as our heroes, but not heroes like, oh, if only I could be like them. Heroes like, hey, I can be exactly like them if I do exactly what they did. And luckily, they've come to this world to show me through their writings and through emanations and through teachers, show me exactly what they've done that I need to do to achieve what they've achieved. And I can't reinforce this enough. We're looking at these holy beings in the space in front of us in order to relate to them and recognize that they transformed into reliable guides and that we can transform into reliable guides in dependence upon the same things that that cause them to have that transformation to take place. We are so incredibly fortunate that we have this opportunity, we have this basis, we have the ability to transform because our mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied, and the stains are adventitious. We have Buddha nature. We have a proliferating Buddha nature, which means that our mind can mature to the state of perfection, even though it's not at this point. And the emptiness of our proliferating Buddha nature is our natural Buddha nature. And because of our mind being empty of inherent existence, our mind has the potential to change. It's not stuck in an intrinsically static state. If it were, then it wouldn't transform. It couldn't transform. But our mind is merely clear in knowing. It's merely a mirror that's lit up that knows how to, it reflects things very perfectly that it's that dependent origination is allowing it to experience it and know. And we just have to change the causes and conditions in our mind and our experience in order for us to have the experience of the pure mind of the Buddha, which also is empty of inherent existence, but dependently originates from omniscience to omniscience to omniscience. Our mind dependently originates from not omniscient to not omniscient to not omniscient. But our mind can transform into omniscience because the causes for omniscience exist. And our mind is of the type that can become omniscient because it can proliferate, it can mature, it can take the good qualities that it has and make them the best possible versions of those good qualities. And that's how the Buddha hangs out, with the best versions of all of the qualities that we have minor parts of already that we just need to build upon and transform this mind that isn't stuck in ignorance into a mind of wisdom. And we're very, very fortunate that we have this opportunity. So we're looking at these beings in the space in front of us, not like gods who can, we know that the Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries with his hands. His spiritual transformations, realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We know this is the fact of the Buddha. So when we imagine the merit field, we shouldn't say, oh, they'll do it for us. Or if I sit next to a high lama, he or she will do it for me. They can teach me and they can show me what I need to be shown, but it's my duty then to take these teachings that I've heard and then take them in the proper sequence of wisdom. The wisdom arisen from hearing, and then the wisdom arisen from analysis, and then the wisdom arisen from meditation. And I have a mind that can have those three types of wisdom occur, and my mind can start to have experiences that tally more with reality than it does now. And eventually my mind will only experience things that tally with reality once I'm a Buddha, no matter what I'm doing. But until then, if I, haven't seen emptiness directly, which I haven't, so there's no shot that I've ever not experienced grasping at inherent existence and the appearance of inherent existence. And if I were to see emptiness, it would be only during that time of seeing emptiness where there wasn't an appearance of inherent existence until becoming a Buddha. So it's only the Buddha who doesn't have the appearance of inherent existence. So we have this opportunity to make our minds go from ignorant, concealed minds, deceptive minds, to minds that never, ever are deceived again. And it's because of these teachings. And it's because of learning that everything that we've known since beginningless time has been screwed up in a number of ways. We've thought that cherishing ourselves was better than cherishing others. We've thought that things inherently exist when they don't. They've appeared to inherently exist and they don't. So there's been something that's been mistaken since beginningless time. And these beings that we're imagining in the space in front of us have figured out what it is that's the mistake, and then can show us how to undo that, exactly how to undo that mistake. So we're very, very lucky for that. So then we imagine that let's share this gift with all sentient beings. Let's think about all those sentient beings that are suffering in the various states of suffering. Let's first begin with those beings. Let's do this in the manner that we're doing it. When we think about inviting all sentient beings to be our guests and sharing this gift of the Dharma with them, we're thinking that, let's bring them all here so that they can learn how to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, so that they can learn how to have happiness and the causes of happiness. Wanting them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering is compassion. Wanting them to have happiness and the causes of happiness is love. And we know that those ideas come about through a cognitive transformation that has to take place for us to have actual love through the force of attraction that has its object of observation, all sentient beings, and kind of a great compassion that has as its object of observation all sentient beings. This is something that we have to make our minds work towards having the experience of. It's not natural for it to occur. So when we're doing the practices, when we're doing the equanimity practice, we know that we're doing it in relation to first neutrals, then friends, and then enemies. But when we do the practices starting with, recognizing sentient beings as our mothers, and all the way up to the last cause of altruism. So when we look at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, there's recognizing sentient beings are your mother. All sentient beings are your mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, altruism. These are all the causes for what occurs, which is the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And when we look at generosity in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, it takes place in the perfection of generosity section. And when we look at what we're trying to do, where we invite all sentient beings and try to connect with all sentient beings and share this Dharma with all sentient beings and lead them in prayer, we're trying to engage in what's called the generosity of the Dharma. And this generosity, we're imagining we're able to do this, which we can't already do, meet with all sentient beings and be generous with the Dharma with them. But by relating our minds in that way, we're setting seeds there so that footprints that will allow us to actually do that when we're a Buddha in the future, and we'll become more and more capable when we become a Bodhisattva as we traverse the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, and meditation, and then eventually achieve that highest state of no more learning. So when we engage in, when we're looking at the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment and generosity, we know there's giving material generosity. So when we're doing Tonglen practice and we're doing the giving, we know that we can give material things, material generosity. We can imagine these sorts of things, but material generosity can't make someone discover the truth of suchness. This will actually, or just giving them the suffering of change, giving them some pleasant feeling within cyclic existence, some happy feeling within cyclic existence. But these are necessary. Mundane happiness is necessary in order to sustain sentient beings. And when we engage in the next type of generosity of giving love, sentient beings feel so unloved and need to be loved to be sustained, to be able to keep going, to be able to practice and then find the truth eventually. But just them being cared for and feeling loved will not allow them to be liberated. And then the next type of generosity, giving them protection from fear, protecting animals, protecting humans, protecting them from fear, trying to help, people who are experiencing the various disasters and so forth that we know are all going on in the world, this protection from fear. But we can't protect them from the fears of future rebirths. They can only protect themselves from the fears of future rebirths. All those things will occur again. They will have to be in another earthquake. They'll have to be in another fire. I will be in a fire. I will be in an earthquake. Any moment, a natural disaster could happen. And in this place that I'm at right now, even though it seems so permanent, and all that I know will start to disappear before my eyes and dissolve before my eyes, and all of my elements will start to dissolve into one another, and I won't have seen it coming, because death will come, nothing can stop it, and we have no idea when that's going to happen. So it's the generosity of the Dharma that is the only thing that can truly help sentient beings. So let's imagine that we're engaging in the generosity of the Dharma, which is an activity of a bodhisattva, which is the first perfection, generosity. The highest generosity of the bodhisattva is the generosity of the Dharma. This is what the bodhisattva knows is the only generosity that can then allow sentient beings to never have to suffer again and never have to experience states of happiness that aren't the highest possible. So the bodhisattva does what he or she can do within loving and protecting and giving material things to beings in order to do one specific thing. One thing. These high lamas care about one thing: teaching the truth of suchness so that you are liberated. So imagine you bring your friends, imagine you bring neutrals, imagine you bring people who we find difficulty with, all these different types of beings, imagining hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods. The hell beings are experiencing fires 24/7 for an eon. The hungry ghosts are experiencing hunger for eons and eons. The animals are experiencing what we can see, the sufferings of those animals in the sea and on the earth and in the sky. We don't have to go very far to see that suffering. The suffering of the humans, imagining bringing every one of these beings here, demigods and gods, even the form and formless realms beings. Imagine they're transformed into beings that can hear these teachings, and that all of their individual sufferings or their heightened states of bliss are removed just enough for them to hear about what matters the most, and that's the truth of suchness. That's the teachings for beings of three capacities. Imagine now that you've invited all sentient beings here to be your guest, and now let's imagine that we're here now in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, ready to experience the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. The Buddha, when we categorize the teachings, as we talked about last week, there's the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. The first turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. The target audience was primarily those of the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika system. He taught the Four Noble Truths. He taught the Four Noble Truths in 12 different statements. And then we find the teaching on the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths. So this is the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. And again, when we look at the target audience among the four tenet systems of Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamantra, and Madhyamaka, the target audience at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma were the lower tenet system practitioners of the Abhidharma, of the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika tradition. And the second turning of the wheel of Dharma was done at Vulture Peak Mountain in Rajagriha, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. The Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in 18 different lengths, from the longest one being 100,000 verses, and the shortest one being just the letter A, syllable A. And this second turning of the wheel of Dharma was taught again in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, the target audience being the Madhyamaka practitioners. So here, the target audience was Madhyamaka Prasangika, we would say, but Madhyamaka would be the target audience in this particular sutra. And then we would say Madhyamaka Prasangika because that's the final view. That's the view of Lord Buddha, is Madhyamaka Prasangika. In terms of the final view, the final established conclusion that a Buddha would have is that all phenomena are empty of intrinsic existence, even at the conventional level. So the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha made statements that are groundbreaking and ground shaking that we have to then apply to the first turning of the wheel of Dharma and then the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. So the third turning of the wheel of Dharma was taught in Vaishali. And this is where 10th ground bodhisattvas got up and asked the Buddha various questions. And one of them, Prachika Samuppada, got up and said to the Buddha that there seems to be some contradiction between the first and the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. What gives? Could you please explain to us what's going on? What did the Buddha mean when he first said that the Four Noble Truths truly exist, and then he said that nothing truly exists? And then the Buddha began to speak, and the target audience for the third turning of the wheel of Dharma were the Chittamantra mind-only school practitioners. It says that out of compassion, the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma of the mind-only school in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, where this idea of the mind only, the mind being intrinsically truly existent, the mind, everything being the nature of the mind, of the nature of the mind, of the same nature as the mind, and the teachings on Buddha nature and so forth. So the Buddha, gave this teaching to explain that so we'll go into that another time. So the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, Buddha taught the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. And that lack of inherent existence of all phenomena is the antidote. The understanding of the lacking of inherent existence of all phenomena is the antidote to the self-grasping ignorance, which is the cause of cyclic existence, that which is the cooperating condition for cyclic existence to occur. And if that isn't there, then cyclic existence can't occur. So if we don't want suffering, then we need to know why we are suffering. So cyclic existence, the 8, 6, and 3 types of suffering occur because of self-grasping ignorance, which gives rise to inappropriate attention, which gives rise to the course of afflictions such as attachment, hatred, and ignorance, which give rise to the contaminated karmas, which gives rise to then samsara, which is being forced into contaminated body, speech, and mind by contaminated karmas and afflictions, corresponding active seeds, forced into this situation by the self-grasping ignorance that fails to see that things inherently exist, and then has kind of an improper way of looking at them as attractive or unattractive, or neutral feeling, attractive or unattractive, or kind of neutral. And then those attractive things create pleasant feelings, unattractive things create unpleasant feelings, and neutral creates neutral feelings. And then the neutral feelings are just perpetuated as neutral feelings give rise to this ignorance, which is kind of perpetually there since beginningless time because of this kind of habituation, these dysfunctional tendencies that make us see things as inherently existent, the innate self-grasping ignorance. So all things that around us we're not attracted to or unattracted to, we still see as inherently existent. And those things that we find attractive, we find pleasant. Those things that we find unattractive, we find unpleasant. And we move towards the things we find attractive, and we push away the things we find unattractive. And in the midst of all of that, we're creating contaminated karmas. And that contamination gives rise to suffering. The Buddha stated in the 4, what are we saying? The 4 seals. All composite things are impermanent. All contaminated things are the nature of suffering. All phenomena are the nature of emptiness and selflessness, and transcending sorrow is peace. So we have to figure out how to transcend this contamination that gives rise to suffering. And contaminated karmas come from the afflictions. They're contaminated because they're afflicted. They're living in the cradle of this affliction. There is no delusion. There is no coarse affliction that doesn't have that doesn't sit in the cradle of the subtle affliction of the self-grasping ignorance. So we have to look at that and see that the self-grasping ignorance cradles all of the problem. And that delusion is what must be reversed. And the Heart Sutra's points are what reverses it. And the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, the teaching on Buddha nature, where there's this idea of this truly existent mind, this in Alivijnana, or this mind that has some sort of, according to the Prasangika system, has intrinsic arisal from other that doesn't exist. There's something positive that doesn't exist. We have to take the understanding of this second turning and apply it to the Buddha nature teachings that were given at the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, and then we'll be able to understand the kind of final points and understand how all of the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma are necessary for all practitioners. So it's important that we do that through our systematic studies, come to this conclusion. So the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, the definitive teaching according to the Madhyamaka Prasangika. According to the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, definitive teaching is a teaching on the ultimate, the emptiness of inherent existence. It doesn't, like the autonomy school says, that it also has to be taken at face value and be a teaching on inherent existence. On the ultimate truth, on ultimate truth. But the Prasangika school says that it just needs to be able to be a teaching on the ultimate truth, and not taken at face value. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. And the autonomy school feels there's a need to add that things are not ultimately existent, because they believe that things inherently exist conventionally. So you can look into all of this. But the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge explicitly teaches us about the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. Teaches us a fact that we've, since beginningless time, not known. that things lack inherent existence. We've grasped at them as having an inherent existence. We grasp at airplanes and boats and ants as having inherent existence. And I grasp at myself as having inherent existence. I grasp at I and mine as having inherent existence. I grasp at I as being inherently existent. I grasp at my hand being inherently existent, was grasping at the phenomena, the self of phenomena. I grasp at myself as being inherently existent, so I grasp at the I of being inherently existent, which is grasping at the self of person. I grasp at my hand then as being inherently existent, and that's the grasping at the self of phenomena. And then I grasp at my hand as being mine, being an inherently existent mind. And this thought mine is the grasping at the self of person. So it's really incredible that we have these teachings to find out how cyclic existence is created. It's not just by grasping at this self of person, it's also grasping at the self of phenomena. And Arya Nagarjuna in the Precious Garland says, if you grasp at the aggregates, you will grasp at the self of person. As you grasp at the self of person, you will have cyclic existence. There's no way around that. So if I believe my hand inherently exists, then I'm going to believe I inherently exist, because I'll believe that hand is mine. And my hand, this is my hand. You know, my hand is mine. So my hand inherently exists as grasping at phenomena as inherently exists. My hand is mine. Inherently exist. Inherently exist. My hand is mine, is grasping at mine as having inherent existence and as a self of person. So I hope I didn't just confuse things more, but I challenge you to look into what's called the view of the transitory collection. And this is grasping at I and mine. And the view of the transitory collection, which you will find is that which, according to Chandrakirti, is that which the yogis get rid of, is interpreted in different ways according to the different schools. Everyone except for the Prasangika school says that the grasping at I that needs to be gotten rid of, that causes cyclic existence, is grasping at an autonomous, substantially existent I. And the Prasangika says, no, it's grasping at an inherently existent I and an inherently existent mind. So look into it. These teachings are kind of arrows to point you to things to look to that will help you to understand how to have peace of mind, and eventually have only peace of mind. And then hidden within this teaching are the 5 paths. And we talk about this every week, but I don't think there's enough reinforcement of this in our minds to know that in our future lives, we want to know that the definitive teaching that the Lord Buddha came to give us, what Buddha really came to tell us, is that things are not inherently existent because they dependently originate. This is what the Buddha came to tell us. This is the real medicine at the end of the day that we come to take. The levels of dependent origination of that cause results dependent upon causes. This form of dependent origination is the dependent origination that's spoken about in the lower tenet systems. This is not enough to get you out of samsara. This understanding of dependent origination, the understanding that wholes depend upon parts, this level of understanding of dependent origination and this kind of emphasis that you find in the autonomy school and so forth is not enough. This understanding of dependent origination is not enough of a sign to get you out of cyclic existence. The Prasangika system says the level of dependent origination that you have to understand is that things dependently originate through mere imputation and dependence upon a collection that serves as a basis of designation. Mere imputation, mere come into being through the power of the mind, merely through the power of the mind, nothing from the side of the object. This dependent origination is the dependent origination that we're talking about when we're looking at how we undo cyclic existence. We have to come to see that things have no intrinsic objective inherent existence from their own side whatsoever, even at the conventional level. We have to see that things come into being merely through the power of our minds, merely through imputation, mere imputation when we're looking at the chair, mere imputation and dependence upon a collection that serves as its basis of designation. But the designated object and the basis of designation are mutually exclusive. But it doesn't seem like it to me. It seems like that object sits over there on its own. We don't walk around thinking that it's merely imputed by my mind, that there's merely a basis of designation. There's a collection of parts. There's a collection of causes and conditions and wholes and parts that are merely serving as a basis of designation, that have no designated object within those parts. But it sure seems like it, doesn't it? It sure appears like it. My sense consciousness has the appearance of an inherent existence 24/7. When I smell something, it smells inherently existent. Figure that out. When I hear something, it sounds inherently existent. All my sense consciousness is imbued with deception. It all appears inherently existent. Appears inherently existent. When I eat something, it tastes inherently existent. And then it tastes inherently good or inherently existently bad. And it has no concrete status whatsoever of attractive or not attractive from its own side. Yet I think that it does because I grasp at it as being inherently existent. Think about that. If this is true, if everything is appearing to us incorrectly, and if we're believing in something that isn't right from the moment of every single apprehension and perception, and that is causing us to shape our world, then our world is misshapen. And the Heart Sutra comes to start to undo that misshapenness and say things are not produced from self, other, both, or causelessly, as Arya Nagarjuna's refutation of the four modes of production we find. Buddha came to tell us that we aren't going to find the designated object within its parts intrinsically, outside of its parts intrinsically, being dependent on its parts intrinsically, or its parts being dependent upon it, or being cradle of it intrinsically, or being an intrinsic possessor, or being, intrinsically just its collection, or intrinsically its shape. The Buddha came to tell us we're not going to find the designated object within the basis of designation, although it appears 24/7 that it's right there. The imputed object's right there. But my shoe's an imputed object. That thing I impute as shoe, my dog imputes as toy. The imputed object's not right over there. The basis of designation is a mere collection of parts that my dog imputes as toy and I impute as shoe. My dog imputes as food sometimes. Doesn't know any better. Literally eats and swallows it. I don't know. Why would you eat and swallow it if you didn't think it was food? I don't know. Think about that. There's a basis of designation in everything that we're looking at. I'm looking at the person I love. It's a basis of designation. That I'm saying is over there. That's Lori over there. But then when I try to seek out Lori, the self of person that I grasp at as being inherently existent, I find that I can't find Lori within her parts intrinsically or outside of her parts intrinsically. I can't find Lori anywhere within the earth, water, wind, fire, space, consciousness. And without those 6 things, a person doesn't make any sense. So I can't find Lori, who I grasp at as being intrinsically existent, anywhere in the 6 things that when taken away, there's no Lori. So I can't find Lori in there or outside of there. So there has to be another mode of existence for Lori other than the one that I'm picking up on 24/7. And I've just never thought about it. And that not thinking about it causes me to grasp at Lori in such a way that I see as so attractive that I will help her before I'll help you. And that bias will cause us not to become a Buddha. So let's recite that which allows us to start to undo this self-grasping ignorance. And then by seeing that we're stuck like this in self-grasping ignorance, it allows us to start to have more compassion for others, to see that they don't know this information and they're stuck too. We know this information and we can get unstuck, but so many individuals don't know this information. And this helps us to generate compassion. And when we see people behaving badly, we know they're behaving badly for the same reason that we've behaved badly. And that's because we grasp at things as being inherently existent. And this is the panacea. This is the antidote right here at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. And this is the emptiness we have to understand if we want to practice highest yoga tantra. And hidden within this is the path of accumulation, where we find the generation of the mind that aspires to enlightenment, bodhicitta. We must have bodhicitta, and we must understand the Madhyamaka Prasangika view of emptiness if we want to practice highest yoga tantra. So we shouldn't engage in self-deception and think that we're practicing something that can't possibly be practiced if we don't have bodhicitta and we don't have an understanding of emptiness. We can say everything transforms into emptiness. We have no clue what that means whatsoever. We have no idea what that everything transforms into, being empty of inherent existence, a non-affirming negative. Not everything transforms into a positive phenomena that we're talking about as emptiness in this case. When we look at what emptiness is, the emptiness of inherent existence, it's not an affirmation. It's a non-implicative negation, a non-affirming negative. So we'll learn about what that is, hopefully, or we'll cycle in samsara. And if according to Shantideva, realizing emptiness is the only way to liberation, what else do we have to do but to learn what that exactly is? The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Kalajibe nijo dambane, nguje duju ngai dudo, genju babalama yi bujinzi, nezon gandrozo la shatzelo, agasamara jashandara samara be azamara jana. Agasamara jasandara. Aga samara jasandara samara yabe de ata on gate gate paragate parasangate bodhiso babagonja sanji kai dembe doji she loba doji meba doji shewa doji dagi baji mete biji danji she din glorious ha kirin janja je je wa dan midun be jandan wa dan tumba junjin bunzon so joji dashi de janden da de le jo. Make a mandala offering, imagining the precious, beautiful universe we're offering to the holy merit field, imagining that you and all sentient beings are making this mandala offering, imagining that all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are receiving this pure offering of practice. You're imagining this is being offered to them in this perfect universe. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Gamni Rata Yam Sanje Jodan Zoji Janan La Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jishi Jibe Zonanji Jola Benji Sanje Jubasho Zanye Jodan Zoji Janan La Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jishi Jibe Zonanji I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I accumulate by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So let's now read the source of all my good through, and we'll get to some of the commentary we were going to go through tonight. We were looking at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. We've already gone through the section on equanimity, which is the pre-step for the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. I encourage you to look at those teachings if you haven't seen them, and if you're hearing what you're hearing tonight you find interesting, because we used an enormous a lot of resources to look at equanimity, and we've used a lot of resources to look at recognizing sentient beings are your mother. And we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight, and then we'll move on to the step of remembering their kindness. So before we do that, let's read the source of all my good. This is the text that we've been going over for a very, very long time. Rinpoche taught it many, many times. And then I feel so fortunate to be able to share it with you because he asked me to continue his teachings after he passed. I attended a lot and translated a lot of teachings for him. And, you know, luckily, some of that information stuck with me, and I've been able to practice it, and it's helped me. And now I can share it with you. So the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. And isn't that the fact? This is one fact that I have realized 100% beyond the shadow of a doubt after experiencing the kindness of Namgyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche for half of my life, 25 years. I never met a being or was taken care of by a being like that. And so I know that I never experienced any being ever that I know of that was like him, that had such a close personal connection to me. And I say as my root teacher, and of course His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche, all of my teachers, and Geshe Dorje Damdar Rinpoche and Umsla Geshe Aga Rinpoche, but we know that my root Lama, who I feel all of these other teachers are just emanations of, Namgyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche was one of the greatest scholars in the world, and just was so kind. Source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him or her in the proper way is the very root of the path. Grant me then to serve and follow him or her with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I have died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them, but they can't be trusted. They're the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest cares to make the vows. Excuse me. Grant me to give the greatest cares to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teachings. I have slipped and fallen in the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I am not well trained in the three moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I've practiced past shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then always to keep them, even if it costs my life. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me that practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times, highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me or outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. We're so lucky to have this 14 stanza roadmap to enlightenment that we can understand more and more and more of as we engage in systematic studies, as we learn more about the stages of the path and look at the larger Lam Rems, we can plug the deep, 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 deep meaning into each of these stanzas. And as we read them, it's just like an eruption of understanding that'll begin to occur more and more. And you'll see how, wow, Lama Tsongkhapa was so skilled, so incredible that he was able to write such a short thing and cover all of it in a way that is moving, not just in a summarized way that I need 125 commentaries to figure out how I convince you that all of Lord Buddha's teachings are in it. It's something that's so clear that you can see how you begin as a spiritual practitioner and the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, and then move on to the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity and to the teachings for beings of great capacity. How you as a practitioner go through these stages of realization that are necessary, that build upon one another, that end in this beautiful, beautiful state of being called Buddhahood. Wow. Aren't we the luckiest? What is Buddhahood? It's a freedom from all states of suffering and a bliss that never, ever ends. A state of perfect love, compassion, skillful means, power, and wisdom that no other being in the universe has. No other being in the universe has this reliability because no other being in the universe has this excellent quality of concern for others, coupled with the excellent quality of knowing reality and diversity, the omniscience of a Buddha, that not only the Buddha knows everything, but cares about you more than anything in the universe at the same time. So just cares about helping you. This is so amazing. I have to do this thing again here. Let's see if I can do it. I'm putting puzzle pieces and proving I'm not a robot. Okay. One of the applications makes me prove I'm not a robot. Do I look like do I look like one? I always think that's funny. Like, what do you think I'm trying to get over on you that I don't know how to put that puzzle piece over? I guess the robot doesn't know how to move that puzzle piece over. So anyway, we're at the source of all my good in the section where it begins the Mahayana, where it begins the great scope, where it begins the teachings for beings of great capacity, the Mahayana teachings, where it begins talking about aspiring bodhicitta. Bodhicitta has two kinds, aspiring and engaged bodhicitta. You have to have aspiring bodhicitta to then have engaged bodhicitta. So this stanza is talking about aspiring bodhicitta. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for himself, the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. So here we deal with aspiring enlightenment, and we know, how do you get aspirational bodhicitta? How do you generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment? This aspirational bodhicitta is bodhicitta. So how does this occur? How do you day and night want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings? How do you generate a mind that just wants to work for the sake of others and sees their suffering as one's own suffering and isn't okay with it, and sees others' unhappiness as their unhappiness and isn't okay with it? How does this mind kind of get generated? How does this aspiration that becomes a main mind, not a mental factor, becomes an actual main mind that's always there? May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. How does that main mind occur? And according to the teachings, it occurs through two different lineages of instruction. One passed down through the Extensive Deeds Lineage, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya to Master Asanga, called the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And then the practice passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri to Arya Nagarjuna, and through Shantideva and so forth, called the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. So we've been focusing on that first one, the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, that some lamas would argue really is the foundation for equalizing and exchanging self with others, for really kind of transitioning into that practice. Others would say they're two separate practices. You can do them completely separately. But many great lamas say that the 7-point cause and effect is the more easier one, and the kind of more subtle, profound teaching is the equalizing and exchanging self with others. That when you combine it with the 7-point cause and effect, it's like the kind of major wind behind, your sails to getting bodhicitta. So there's a way you can combine these practices, and we will talk about that. But right now we are doing obsessive investigation related to each of the steps of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we went over equanimity, and we know that equanimity creates a smooth ground, a palette from which you can actually, make this beautiful painting of the mind that aspires to enlightenment. This ground that allows you to start from a place where you would have an equal willingness to benefit others. And we know that this is the pre-step for the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So there's a pre-step, and then there's 6 causes, and then there's 1 result. This is why it's called the 7-point cause and effect. So 6 causes being recognizing sentient beings as your mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, and altruism. This, when you meditate over and over and over and over and over on these things in a systematic way, you will generate the result of bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So if this is the only one of the only ways, and I'm telling you, this is a good foundation for equalizing and exchanging self with others, to get to the entrance into the vehicle. Like if you need to go somewhere and you need a car, you only get in that car. Say there's a car that drives to Buddhahood, you only get in that car if you have bodhicitta. So you better learn exactly how to get it, and that's what we're trying to do. So we went over equanimity and a whole bunch, and then we went over this idea that all sentient beings are our mothers. And we weren't satisfied with, just think about it. It's a great thought. Oh, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could believe such a thing? No, we proved it to ourselves through various forms of reasoning and analysis, and we showed where this idea of the 7-point cause and effect practice comes from. We looked at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and we saw that Master Asanga's quote from the levels of yogic deeds is there, where he quotes Buddha saying, there's no place anywhere in the universe you haven't taken birth, and there's no being who hasn't been your mother, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, roommate, in among those beginningless rebirths that you've had. So Master Asanga in the level of yogic deeds quotes a Buddhist sutra. And then we looked for one, and I found the Lankavatara Sutra, the Descent into the Lanka Sutra, where we find this same exact point that Buddha makes, that every single being, and he's really pushing not to eat meat. And he's saying that every being in the universe has been your mother, has been your brother, has been your aunt, has been your teacher, or someone like your teacher. Every being in the universe in your previous lives has had this relationship with you. So the Buddha, Lord Buddha, in the Descent into the Lanka Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra, which we could a lot of the Chitta Mantra teachings rely upon, we see that this is why I kind of tried to connect it to Master Asanga's text, because Master Asanga was a mind-only kind of teacher. But check it out for yourselves. We're just showing the source information for this 7-point cause and effect practice, and then showing how to prove it to your own mind so it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense to you, it won't turn into a realization. You've got to hear it and then analyze it, make it make sense to you. Okay, that sounds great, but how do I make that make sense to me? Yeah, all beings are my mother. That sounds crazy. I had one mother. I was born, on June 26th, out of her womb. Why are you telling me everyone's my mother? That's crazy. There's an aunt, you're telling me they're my mother. So I hear this, and then I have to hear things that I'm told to then analyze to prove this to myself. So then we looked at the third Dalai Lama's Essence of Refined Gold and some proofs and reasonings, and then the Dalai Lama's, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's commentary on the third Dalai Lama's text, where the 14th Dalai Lama says, hey, when you're doing this meditation of recognizing all sentient beings as your mother, if there's some other being who took care of you like a mother, who loved you so much and would take care of you as a vulnerable being, use them in that place. So we learned how to be flexible within our meditation in order to transform our mind. We're not trying to do this to be rigid, so we do it just exactly right. We're doing it so our mind becomes exactly right. A non-biased mind that loves all beings, no matter who they are and what they do, and wants them to have free from suffering, no matter who they are, what they do. So we then looked at, okay, well then how does this then make sense? So we looked at Pabunka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, where he, just like the second Panchen Lama, Panchen Losang Yeshe, uses this idea of Master Dharmakirti's logic from the Pramanavartika Karika, where he says that the mind and the sense powers and the wind and so forth don't arise from something that's a dissimilar class from the body. It has to come from a previous moment of a similar class. And then we came to understand from Pabunka Rinpoche's commentary that this moment's mind comes from a previous moment's mind, from a previous moment's mind, and that we can, when we trace it back, we come to the mind at conception, and we know that because that's a mind, the mind at conception, came from a previous moment's mind, because it's a mind like our present mind. So we established a syllogism of a subject, predicate, reason, and an illustration to show that this mind has no beginning and that this mind has no end. It can't be, it doesn't have a beginning, a creation, a first moment, nor a way for it to be destroyed, because it's not like our body that will perish. It will move on to our next life, just as it did in our previous life, moved on to this life. So we start to establish this. And we know that we need these Tibetan commentaries and so forth, because just relying on there's no place, no being that hasn't been this kind of person to you, we might not start to look at what the implications of that are. We might not look at what that's going to change about our day when we discriminate every being in the universe differently and see them as a being we find as we would be like a magnet to metal, drawn to, that we have affection for. And it talks about in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, that's the name of the game. We're trying to get affection for beings. And this is what I wanted to read today. We're trying to get this affection to occur. And the way that it's going, and it's not about the affection to occur for some. And that's the kind of affection we have now. It's an attached affection. We're trying to have an unattached affection. And that's not an affection we've ever known anything about. So we're getting rid of the attached affection by working on it, by going through a cognitive process of equanimity and the various other things, so we have a non-biased, non-attached affection that occurs. So precious to know this. So we looked at Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika Karika. We looked at Pabunka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. And then we went on to the second Pension Lama or fifth Pension Lama, depending on how you count them. Pension Lojang Chuji Jetsen, the first Pension Lama, or fourth, depending on how you count them. And Pension Lozang Yeshe, the second Pension Lama, or fifth, depending on how you count them. The first Pension Lama writing the easy path, second Pension Lama writing the swift path. So we read from the swift path where we established all kinds of signs and reasoning to prove that all sentient beings are our mother. Tons of them. I encourage you to go back and look, because we demonstrated it and then demonstrated again. And why is that important? Because the next step that we get to, recognizing their kindness, is crucial for us to have relied upon this. Our mind has no beginning, and all sentient beings have had this position, and there's nowhere we haven't been born. So we're relying on these quotes from the Lankavatara Sutra and the Arya Asanga's text and Lama Tsongkhapa and Pabunka Rinpoche and Dharmakirti. We're relying all this to go then, okay, what were they like when they held this position as our mother? So we haven't even thought about that. The next step gets into the beautiful tradition that begins to show us how to work with a quote that's just a one quote from someone like Master Asanga, who's quoting something from a sutra. And if we only had that sutra and didn't have these kind masters spoon feeding us, we wouldn't necessarily know what the implications of the statement that all sentient beings have been our mother are. So then we think about what that would mean. What does that mean? Why are we doing that? We're doing that because we want to have affection for all beings. In Kamala Shila, so in the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, Volume 2, page 37, it says, having affection for all beings. So right after impartiality, Lama Tsongkhapa feels the need to sell you on the need to develop affection. And the way you develop affection is those first kind of 3 steps of recognizing sentient beings as your mother, remembering their kindness, and wishing to repay their kindness. You've created a fertile ground of equanimity. Now Lama Tsongkhapa wants to sell you on the need to go from being equally willing to benefit to having affection for every single being in the universe. So Lama Tsongkhapa quotes Kamala Shila's Stages of Meditation. It says, moistened by love, your mind becomes like friable, I don't know, Friable, flexible, friable. That's a big word. I'm sure it means what it's supposed to. Fertile soil. So your mind becomes a fertile soil. When you plant the seed of compassion, it grows easily and bountifully. Therefore, after you infuse your mind with love, cultivate compassion. The love here views living beings with affection as if they were your dear children. By cultivating impartiality, you eliminate the unevenness in attitude that comes from the bias of your attachment and hostility, and your mind will become like a good field. Kamala Shila says here that if you moisten your mind with the water of love, with views which views all beings with affection, you then plant the healthy seed of compassion. You will easily generate great compassion. Understand this to be an extremely important point. Why am I doing these next 3 practices? In order to generate affection for all beings. Why did I do the equanimity practice? In order to create a smooth palate, to create an even ground, so that I could come to this kind of equal willingness to benefit, and then open-mindedness enough to see that every being could be my mother. Because if I haven't done that equanimity step and I get to difficult people and I try to think of them as my mother, I'll have a bias, won't be able to do it, and no one's ever gotten bodhicitta with bias. So we're doing these steps and then going back to look at them as friends, neutrals, and enemies. We originally looked neutrals, friends, and enemies to try and show the different ways our minds react. We were supposed to have cleaned that up, but we're still seeing if they react like that through this whole process when we look at them as our mother and say, is my mind still reacting the way that it didn't that it shouldn't? Because if it's reacting with bias, I need to go back and work on equanimity. Oh, it's not reacting with bias. Okay, it looks like now I've established that friends, enemies, and neutrals are all friends, neutrals, and enemies, all are my mother. Okay, well then what does that mean? Well, then I take my mother of this life and I think about the kind of affection, the kind of kindness that she has shown me. So I'll read just the part as a teaser from the Lam Rinpoche, and then we'll get into the piles of books next week to prove that this makes sense. And we'll look at those same exact commentaries where possible to show this second step and where it's found in scripture and how we can relate to it through a process of cognitive transformation that would end in an effect of a main mind of bodhicitta. So potawa, so this is cultivating a remembrance of their kindness. So we're already supposedly believe that every single sentient being is our mother. We've gotten there. So now, okay, you're all my mother. Okay, so now I'm looking at an ant as I walk up to them and say, Mom, hi, Mom. Oh, mother. I'm walking up to, I'm seeing a bird fly and I'm saying, mother. Now what? Okay, so that's a mother. What are mothers like? I think about a mother. Potawa said that after you have recognized that all living beings are your mothers, you will quickly remember their kindness if at first you cultivate a remembrance of your mother's kindness in this lifetime. Do so in accordance with his presentation as follows. Imagine your mother clearly in front of you. Think the following a few times. Not only has she been my mother at present, but she has been so an incalculable number of times throughout beginningless existence. So remembering sentient beings as our mother, we started with our present mother and remembered she's been our mother before. So it like double impacted her kindness. And then as your mother, she protected you from all harm and provided you all benefit and happiness. Particularly in this lifetime, she carried you for a long time in her womb. Then when you were helpless, a newborn infant, she held you to the warmth of her flesh and bounced you on the tips of her 10 fingers. She suckled you at her breast and used her mouth to give you soft food and remove mucus from your nose, used her hand to wipe away your excrement. So in various ways, she nurtured you tirelessly. Moreover, when you were hungry and thirsty, she gave you food and drink. When you were cold, clothes. When you were poor, she gave you her wealth, those things which were very dear to her. Even more, what she gave to you were not things that she had obtained easily, but that she had secured through great hardship while engaging even in wrongdoing and receiving ill repute and suffering. If you suffered from illness, pain, or the threat of death, your mother made the choice from the depths of her heart that she would rather be sick than you. She would rather be in pain than you be in pain. She would rather die than you die. By putting this feeling into action, she did what was needed to alleviate these troubles. In short, contemplated one-pointedly how your mother provided help and happiness and cleared away every harm and suffering to the best of her knowledge and ability. And Lama Tsongkhapa is so kind, to the best of her knowledge and ability. It's not saying your mother was perfect. Lama Tsongkhapa gets that. By cultivating a remembrance of your mother's kindness, you will not remember in just words. Once you have given rise to such a remembrance, recognize that other friends and relatives, such as your father, are your mothers, and cultivate a remembrance of their kindness. Then do the same with persons towards whom you have neutral feelings. Once you have produced an attitude towards them which is similar to how you feel towards your friends, recognize that your enemies are your mothers, and cultivate a remembrance of their kindness. Then when you have an attitude towards your enemy that is like the one you have towards your mother, recognize that all beings in the 10 directions are your mothers, and then gradually, with increasing extensiveness, cultivate a remembrance of their kindness. We are very fortunate people, folks. Please take advantage of this life of leisure and the opportunities that we have to practice the Dharma. This is our only chance at never having to suffer again. We can, from this human basis, just like Shantideva said in the guide, Bodhisattva Shantideva says in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, that bodhicitta is a gold-making elixir that transforms this impure body, speech, and mind into the jewel of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And it is not just saying that. You will see as you discover these teachings for yourself that a transformation takes place at little levels, more and more, so that you prove to yourself that this makes sense. And I encourage you to do that, but it won't without systematic studies. It won't without putting the effort in. It won't by thinking that you're going to just receive some sort of blessing through the air somehow from a holy being, and that because they did the work for you. It won't occur. Systematic studies, patience, and be like the first Dalai Lama mentions in his praise, the jewel for the throats of the fortunate. ornament for the throats of the fortunate, I think it's called, is praise of Arya Tara, where he says, may our practice be like a river that's always flowing, always going, perpetually improving, perpetually maturing. May we be like those masters that perpetually matured, again, like those masters that perpetually matured, like Gontan Deme Drome, who says, may I, in every moment, plant a virtuous imprint in my mind. Concluding mandal offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I made, may they be purified by the Vajrasattva mantra. Om Benza Sattva Samayamani Balai Benza Sattva Sam Bhajita. Dila Meva Vazu, the Kai Meva Vazu, Kai Meva Vazu, Meva Zavazini Meva Rajasava comes into Jamaica. Gidam Shin Guru Ma, Bogamaza Tata Kata Benza Mamemoka, Benza Baba Ma, Samaya Sapa, Om Ve. May we always be protected by Palden Lamo. Jorama Jorama Jojarama, Tunjo Kalaraja Mo, Ramo Ajadaja Tunjo, Rula Hong Jo, Hong. Samanta Bhadra dedication. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors to traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase forevermore. Long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and help for beings, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. And a supplication to Namgyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, my root teacher, to please always be connected to me in all my lives, and all of us in all of our lives, and continue to show himself in whatever form necessary to help me remove my afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, and help you remove your afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. Help you how? By teaching you and me, and help me how? By teaching us the truth of suchness and teaching us the downfalls of the self-cherishing attitude, so that we can discover these realities ourselves and then get rid of the problems in our mind, which are called afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend, who is inseparable from Arya Tara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible, to your pure body, speech, and mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om 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 Om. Pure rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of free capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood the sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts in crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope that your week is full of virtue and that you have a deeper understanding of these teachings because of tonight's presentation. Thank you so much. Please analyze these teachings. This is just the wisdom arisen from hearing. And to the best of my ability, I've given you correct information to analyze. It's your job to analyze it and discover these realities for yourself, as our teachers did. It's my job to analyze these things I'm talking about so that I can be a possessor of the realization instead of someone who just understands how to be a possessor of the realization. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.